Hi, everybody.
The room fill up.
Yes, look at all these
Okay,
friends.
all right.
Oh, well, everyone, welcome. I am Lindsay Garcia, as you can see in my little box. I am the Meadowlark publicist, and we also have Tracy Simmons up here, our publisher, and of course, Allison Hicks, the woman of the hour. Thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight. We are just so pleased to be celebrating Allison and good poetry. That's always exciting, and a new book. Everybody loves a new book. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy Million Simmons. I'm the owner of Meadowlark Press, the home of the Birdie Poetry Prize. And I just want to welcome you to the book launch of our 2021 Birdie Poetry Prize winner, Allison Hicks. It has been such a pleasure getting to know Allison through her poetry. And this book is gorgeous, of course. I'm so proud of it. Thank you to all of you who supported our pre-launch warm-up by purchasing your copy of the book early. And if you haven't ordered it yet, please take a moment to do so. You can pick up a copy direct from Allison, or you can order from Meadowlark Press. And our books are available everywhere that you like to buy books. As a small press, we also like to encourage our readers to order their copies through their favorite independent bookstore, because part of our mission is supporting other book lovers, and we can't think of a better way to celebrate books than to celebrate our independent bookstore owners. So Allison helps us check one little item off our bucket list here. With the publication of Knowing is a Branching Trail, Meadowlark is officially a small press that has published from coast to coast. So that's pretty cool. And we know that this was meant to be, as Allison, a full year before we met her through her poetry manuscript, had the opportunity to visit the Flint Hills right here in the middle of Kansas. And she reports that she fell just a little bit in love with our sweeping vistas. So I look forward to hosting you, Allison, again one day on a return visit. Thank you, Allison, for making our bookshelf a little bigger and certainly brighter with your poetry. And I'm not going to turn over events. I know you've all met Lindsay already, but she serves as our publicist for Meadowlark. And she has been a brilliant addition to the Meadowlark team. And she's also taking on quite a bit of our poetry book creation for the Meadowlark Poetry Press. So keep an eye on what is happening with Meadowlark. I'm very excited about the future. You may have heard us refer to our authors as our partners in publishing books. And we feel very much that our readers are our partners as well. So we wouldn't be here without all of you, and your confidence in us and your support when you buy our books helps us to build a bigger, stronger Meadowlark Press. So thank you very much. And let's get to the fun stuff.
Allison Hicks is the author of poetry collections You Who Took the Boat Out and Kiss, a chapbook of falling dreams, and a novella, Love, a Story of Images. Her work has appeared in Eclipse, Gargoyle, Permafrost, and Poet Lore, among other journals. She was named a finalist for the 2021 Bula Rose Prize by Smartish Pace, was nominated for a Pushcart Prize by Green Hills Literary Lantern, and has received 2 fellowships from the Pennsylvania Council of the Arts. She graduated summa cum laude from Bryn Mawr College and holds an MFA from the University of Arizona. In 1996, she founded Greater Philadelphia Wordshop Studio to support writers in the development of their individual voices and practice of their craft through community-based workshops and private consultation. With Elizabeth Mosier and Therese Halsheed, she co-edited Prompted, on an anthology of work from the first 13 years of the Wordshop Studio. She lives in Pennsylvania with her husband, Charles Griffenstein. Allison, please take it away.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you also to Tracy for producing such a lovely book. I have it. I'll hold it up because this cover, I'm so pleased with it. And it was Tracy's idea to use a photograph of Eddie Ackern's for the cover. And she sent me various versions with various colors, and I'd comment, and then we'd kind of go back and forth. It was a wonderful process, and we were both, I think, really very happy with the way that it came out. And the inside is beautifully laid out too. And so I also want to thank Oscar Medina, the judge of the 2021 Birdie Prize, for selecting my book, and also for his very generous comment. And he said it felt like we shared an understanding. And I wanted to say, yeah, we do. We do share an understanding. It's a wonderful thing to say. And I would like to also say, if there are any poets in the audience, which I know that there are, if you have a book or you're putting together a book, I really encourage you to consider submitting to Meadowlark. To the 2022 Birdie Prize is now open for submissions, and it's really been a wonderful experience to work with this press, and I will sing your praises all day long. So, and also I do want to give a shout out to Bart Edelman. It was great to see a name, because Bart published me very early, and it really made a difference to me. He had a suggestion for the poem he wanted to take, and it was a really good suggestion. And he called me on the telephone from California, to do. And I don't know how many editors would do that. To say, well, look, I have this suggestion, and he was very politic about it. And I knew as soon as he said it that he was absolutely right. But I said, well, let me think about it, and I'll call you back. And then I did call him back. And, so it's really, I owe a lot to him. And I tell that story quite often, or it's a wonderful story that I've told my students. Okay, on to the book. The book is divided into two sections, and originally they were unnamed, but Tracy suggested a title from one poem, taken from one poem in each section for them. And that sounded pretty good to me when she suggested that. Again, I can take suggestions. And arranging a book of poetry is always a challenge. And my previous books, the way that I handled it was to have a lot of smaller sections. And I felt like I could juggle the poems, a smaller numbers of poems that way. And then I put the sections together. But for this one, I really wanted to do it differently. I told myself, okay, you have two sections. That's all you got. You got to do it that way. And I'm really glad that I decided to do that, because it taught me that I could do it. And I also think it ended up well for the book. So this is the title poem from the first section. We could say it's like this. And I should say one other thing about this before, so you'll get it. Every year since 2006, I've spent a week at the Porches Retreat in Norwood, Virginia, in Nelson County, which is very close to where the Tye River empties out into the James. And that's relevant to this poem. We could say it's like this. The time I was cooling off in the Tye, and decided to swim down to the confluence with the James, because I wanted to see what it looked like, where the one flowed out into the other. August, and the water at its deepest barely reached my waist. I part crawled, part strode, part floated. It was not a long way, but felt longer than I'd thought to pass under the railroad bridge. Still, I was game. On the banks, fields with cows swishing their tails, lowing. I never got there. When I reached the flat open space on the right that suggested I was close, thunder and a dark cloud at the edge of the sky commanded that I turn around. Going back, I had to push against the current. It proved fastest to crawl, water cresting around my body, annoyed at the resistance I was providing. Did I think of you, co-conspirators, companions on parallel journeys it is necessary to undertake alone, that we may reconstruct for each other afterward. I could see the railroad bridge. Now I was breathing in deep gasps, grabbing hold of rocks with my feet and hands to keep myself from being swept back. I needed to be out of the water before the storm caught up to me. A guest in this country, I would be trespassing were I to step out onto land where I had not been invited. By the time I reached the wooden dock sticking out into mud, it had started to rain. Moving toward it, my ankles sunk. I pulled myself up, shorts over my dripping suit, my towel around me, muscles trembling, walking as fast as I could, panting up the road, the turn up the hill, counting seconds between rumbles. Arriving finally at the house where I was staying, the room on the second floor, and the porch that looks down on the James, invisible through trees in this season, a dip in the green before the hillside rising on the other side, the river that I've known is there and never seen. And this is from the second section, how it is. The white car that lives in the white of the eye comes out of the sun. Behind the line of parked cars, the potted plant on the corner. Always there, travels submarine, hides in white blood cells, cruises arteries and veins, slides through the body politic. All the times it hasn't shown, you've sensed its filmy existence, so never completely a surprise when it surfaces in peripheral vision. The white car could be an actual car. It could be an election, getting lost in the woods for 5 days and nights, a birth or death. Too late to hit the gas, to swerve, always your fault. Tuck your head down as it pulls you down, slide through until it stops. I put this book together in the summer of 2020 at the Porches retreat. And as you all know, 2020 was the first summer of COVID. And I wasn't sure that I would be able to go. But it turned out there were so many cancellations that I was able to book a week when I was basically the only guest there. And so I felt like it would be all right, you know, and we mask in common areas. The book includes poems that I'd written in earlier years, but also some from that spring, which you could call pandemic poems. And I'm going to read 2 of them now. All right. The first is called Margaret Atwood in Quarantine, and it's inspired by her Mad Adam trilogy, Oryx and Crake, The Year of the Flood, and Mad Adam, which is speculative fiction set in the future, in which a man-made virus, which is created by this brilliant but pretty disturbed young guy, is spread through the human population through pharmaceuticals. And his idea is that he's just going to replace human beings with something better that's engineered, that he has genetically engineered. And it's very interesting to me that these novels were written before COVID-19, which didn't require any human engineering. So this is Margaret Atwood in Quarantine. Lean up against its side, push it open like a flap of a cardboard box, burrow deep into the present. Whatever you find there on the other side won't be the future you're forced to live through, that bad movie where the exits are sealed and have no give, the world you must make your peace in. While fiction, a witness less baroque than truth, pleads the case for the chain of events it has rendered into motion, I sneak out of the courtroom, go back and push on another flap of that box, finding myself somewhere else. Well, okay. And here is an open door is an invitation in the same way as a closed box. 1. The troubles had been packed in, squished against each other, so thick they could hardly breathe. At that moment, the lid opened and air rushed in. 2. During their time in the box, the troubles had forgotten what it was like outside. They huddled together on the sidewalk, homeless. 3. One of them saw a person pass by and jumped. From his perch, he waved at the other troubles, standing there wringing their hands. 4. The man was coming home from work. He felt a weight that he didn't remember from that morning. Bad day, he thought. 5. The other troubles scattered in search of people. Once they looked around, there was no shortage. It was easy to jump onto a swaying arm or leg, a piece of clothing, or catch a foot or toe, hoist up from there. 6. The troubles liked to climb up as far as possible. It seemed strange to them that people didn't brush them off. That's how they discovered they were invisible. 7. They found they could survive on the crumbs of what people ate. 8. In time, people became so used to carrying troubles around that they couldn't remember a time that they hadn't. 9. They grew bonded. So when a trouble was removed, or it fell, or was scraped off by circumstance, people felt they had lost something and mourned. All right. I do have a series of animal poems in the book, so I thought I'd read some of them. This is The Pelicans. You could be swimming along, minding your own, when the shock from that body hits. Watch out, fish. Now that these flyboys are back, they live to tuck and drill down. They'll scoop you up, hinge back their gullets, snap them shut on a trip you're not coming back from. Pelicans fly low up the coast in formation, with few strokes, heads back, scanning the waves. They used to fly into Fisherman's Wharf for R&R until the authorities chased them off. Rougher and larger close up, lounging on the railings, strutting in their battered jackets, peering down their oversized beaks at the crowds gathered to get a look at the outlaws. Sea otter. Thicker than seal, denser than mink, the fur for which you hunted us almost to extinction. You celebrate our survival as your success, stuff fabric likenesses for your young. Approaching our rafts, you judge our lives undemanding. How pleasant to wrap oneself in kelp and ride the waves. You forget our sharp teeth and our drudgery, our omnivore metabolism's drive. We carry no blubber, less body fat than you. We must dive and dive and dive. A quarter of our body weight a day consumed. Squid, abalone, urchin, whatever we can find. And after, groom, each hair perfectly arrayed, skin exposed, its death. We've been to the bottom and felt its offerings. We, like you, must surface. Starlings. 1, he was hanging by a leg from the gutter of our house. Dead, of course, by the time we noticed. He must have been scouting for a nest and somehow his foot caught. There he stayed, tavern sign or tarot card, the hanged starling. 2, what did it mean? We wanted to know. How long it had taken for the bird to die. A human being would have yelled until someone heard and brought opposable thumbs to unhook what was caught. Was he stoic in the way we expect animals to be? Or had he made a sound we didn't recognize or understand? 3. It wasn't so easy to reach him, so we let him hang all fall, and when it got cold, we came inside and forgot. In spring, we looked up from the patio, and he was gone, loosened with icicles or taken by a squirrel or hollowed out, so much hanging there that his body blew away. 4. Shortly after we'd moved in, a starling fell down our chimney. He landed on the hearth, took a couple of jerky steps, then flew up, full wings, wider and stronger than I expected. My instinct was to duck, his to fly, so he made for the stairs, wing grazing my hair. He churned the air, beating and thrashing in that artificially enclosed place, the shelter we needed, having lost the fur that had protected us. His power, our diminishment. 5. Once we gave it some thought, it wasn't so difficult to get him out. We turned off the lights in the house, kept the porch light on, then we opened the door. 6. We had a wire grate placed over the chimney. Sometimes they nest outside my office, in the space between the air conditioner and the windowsill. They make a song that isn't quite song, a low coo trill that enters under the threshold of my hearing. Now I'm going to read 3 poems from what I consider to be the core of the book, and that basically takes on the various ways in which we may come to know things. So the first one of these is the poem from which the title of the book is taken. Knowing is a branching trail that disappears into variety. Knowing is a branching trail that disappears into variety. It is hard to find something you have not first imagined. Only a small portion of the world is known with accuracy, Darwin wrote. Ediacarans went extinct 541 million years ago. Their tracks can be seen at Mistaken Point, Newfoundland. They look like a series of parentheses laid inside each other. Soft-bodied, mouth and anusless, somehow they began to crawl, pushing disc-like bodies forward. They were hunting or escaping a predator. We don't know. We're not even sure they were animals. They could have been plants, fungi, or colonies of single-celled organisms. It could have been an accident, extending bodies into the stream, washed from their perch, like anemones pried from their rocks, who creep across sand to a hard surface. They might have stretched suction cup feet across a gelatin of bacterial mats, working to feel their way back. This next one is a persona poem. That is, it's written in the first person, but the narrator is not me. And I think when I read the poem, it'll be pretty clear who the narrator is. I will say that the poem references the cave paintings of Lascaux, France. The Oryx. I had been kept in darkness, had not eaten in some days. When they brought me out into the hall, men were feeding the blaze on the floor. It hurt my eyes. I squinted, turned away. They gave me the drink. I climbed up, lay on my back on the frame they had constructed. Light traveled, unfolding over stone. I reached my hand to meet the wall and waited. They showed themselves first as tremors, barely detectable below my fingers, growing as they came on until the sound of their hooves was a roar. I stretched to brush their flanks, and as they passed, they became visible to me, and I marked them as they came on, their pendant bellies, tapered horns, their noses, knobby knees. They ran through the rock. To make others see, I marked them. Right. back to another bird poem, Yellow Bird. I want to believe in a world beneath this one. The bird that flies across the lawn is a messenger, that if I follow her in my mind, I will come to a door. She will let me through to the underside of the world. I will look at my life from below, my husband and son walking, the bottom of their shoes. Other times I think there is no door, nothing below, the bird flying bent on her own purposes, her color the outcome of natural selection, nothing mystical, just the world working itself out. Hummingbirds are squeaking, dive bombing the feeder. I too, sitting right side up in this world. The bird keeps coming back, the bird speaking through me. And make another little transition here. I'm a big fan of the composer Bela Bartok, and he is one of my artistic heroes. In addition to being a composer and a pianist, he was one of the first and maybe the first ethnomusicologist. I had to say that very carefully. He traveled around Eastern Europe collecting examples of Magyar peasant music, and he used wax cylinder recordings, which was the technology at the time in the early 20th century. And he emigrated to America in 1940 after his native Hungary made an alliance with Nazi Germany, and the political situation in Europe was not good. But he didn't like America very much. And he started to become ill with what was later diagnosed as leukemia. And his most famous work, Concerto for Orchestra, was composed in the US, and it was a commission from Serge Koussevitzky, who then was the conductor of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So I'm going to read the two poems about Bartók that are in this book. And the first poem, Bartók, very clever title. In that poem, I've incorporated some of the different sounds and different kinds of music that are actually incorporated into the Concerto for Orchestra. So this is Bartók. In the afternoon dark, harvest time, the road covered with leaves, the stranger with the wax cylinders has persuaded the oldest woman in the village to sing. Melody winds from her throat out through the fields. An band is setting up on the green for the evening's dance. Chords spill out church doors. In the fields, men and women look up, wipe faces with their kerchiefs. Across an ocean, strange intervals carry shadows of late afternoon. And here's Bartók in America. Every country has a music running underneath like blood in veins. To hear you must descend. In a country now lost, I traveled beyond edifices and artifice to dirt road villages, and then here, where I am in exile, a wrapper on a bit of cheese, discarded among so many others collecting in the gutter. The wind blows and blows us with it. I miss the strange old songs. I should have wished to be a peasant in the Magyar countryside when I was a boy, instead of some performer pounding on keys. The music here of my adopted country, I can make no sense of it. Like some old married man, my ear has become indifferent, so finely tuned to one, it must forsake all others. Koussevitzky, out of pity, offers me a commission. I accept because it lets me dream in the tones my ear remembers. Let's see. Now I'm going to kind of read some poems. It's kind of a selection of poems from the second half of the book with pretty minimal commentary. The Winter Magician. The winter magician makes earth hard and turns rain white. He lives in a cave and doesn't care to perform tricks of resurrection or resurgence. His audience is captive. He pointedly ignores them as he goes about his business, building a parsimonious fire. His blood is slow to rise, his fingers never truly warm. Pain, his only assistant, not lovely in the least. After his meal of watery rabbit stew, eaten with a bent spoon, they converse. Sometimes he brings out the deck and she picks a card. Always the same one. He still won't tell her how he does it. He works methodically. Given one season to reveal the bones, he does no more, no less. I will say the next one is called Migraineurs. And for anybody who doesn't know, this is actually the official name for people who have migraine, of which I am one. So Migraineurs. We are an ancient order like epileptics or diabetics, though there are more of us. No one can account for our existence, nor the increase in our numbers, except by reproductive or survival advantage. It might have been good for the tribe to have some individuals lie down for a period of time in the back of the cave, out of the light. Did we survive when the rest were picked off? Our brains sang changes like whales dropping to the deep. If there was error in our design, it might have been useful for spiritual reasons to excuse a few from the routines of maintaining physical life. Our kind counted among shamans, the first to have time thrust upon us, sickness turned to gift, painting animals on the walls, calling down their properties for deliverance, painting spears piercing the sides of animals, as we may have wished for the flint to score hairline to nose, peel back the skin, release the spirit who sent visions and fed us strings of words we whispered to distract ourselves from pain, to call the animal to us for the kill. Heart, lungs, bladder. The body is a container that leaks. Skeleton, a cage from which to build shelter. Where is the line between inner and outer? Kidney, liver, gallbladder, in Chinese medicine, organs of purification, separating what to let pass through.
Yes.
Water we hold in our hands, drip down our fingers. We hold thoughts for as long as we can before they pass out of us. We contain feelings when they have power, contain to protect. We have devised many structures, jails, prisons, hospitals, barriers, ropes, lines of armored police with helmets, clubs, tear gas, and guns, schools and gated communities. Containment is not the same as holding. What we hold passes through us, on to others, gift or curse. Perfume escapes the bottle slowly through threads. Neurons fire across a gap. Right, and I will say something about the next poem, North Pacific, because it is about the North Pacific gyre, which is one of 5 major oceanic gyres, and it covers most of the northern Pacific. It's located between the equator and about 50 degrees latitude, and it's the largest ecosystem on Earth, which I really find pretty fascinating. So this is North Pacific. 1. When trapped under ropes or suspended in ice, seawater may seep through imperfections. When the netting wears off, its pattern may remain. 2. Fishermen's floats blown from sake bottles turn in the North Pacific, Japan to Alaska to California, and back across the Pacific. 3. Breaking free on storms or tides, some wash up on the beaches of Taiwan, Canada, and the Northwest US. They have been found in coral reefs on the windward side of Guam. A few are stuck in the Arctic ice pack. It is believed that floats washing up in Alaska have spent 7 to 10 years in the gyre, that most have been afloat longer than that. 4. The ones my mother hung in the window of our old apartment were replicas, most likely from Cost Plus. Decanted sea colors of early childhood, blue and green currents of family life, bubbles and streaks in uneven glass. And the next 2 poems are for my son, Jeremy, who is a junior at University of Colorado Boulder and is tuning in after his chemistry 2 recitations. Okay, so this first one goes back to when we were looking at colleges in winter. After the college tour, my son asks what it's like in winter. We are looking out over Lake Champlain in short sleeves, having eaten lunch in a repurposed garage, bay doors rolled up to let the outdoors in. Long, my husband and I say at the same time. There's a lot of snow, we say, though we know he knows that much. And in any case, no place gets the snowfalls of our childhoods anymore. It snows in May, my husband says, but it melts pretty fast. Across the water, impossible that this could freeze, dark blue and untroubled as clarified sky. A sightseeing boat decked in party lights moves steadily toward us. How to transmit the knowledge we grew up with. To tell the truth, we've gotten used to where we are living now, and the memory dims within us. Pressing the brake impertinently, radio blaring into the drift, I slide across the whitened road so slowly it could take 17 years. And this is to my son. If I could, I would crawl inside you and curl up like a dog. Last night, I dreamed you were in some sort of trouble. I was trying to help, not doing any good. How to translate what's in the space between my heart and stomach, the thing you put there. Yesterday, somebody asked me the name of a tree. I wanted to answer. She had chosen me to ask. She broke off the end of a branch to show someone else. Leaves lined up on both sides of the stem. I recognize the shape and still no name. I am crossing a desert. You are crossing a sea. Letter to the sky. Across our bowl, deep as our atmosphere, you provide friction for those attempting re-entry. Clouds are garments you put on and discard. You layer them up and peel them off. When you fling them, they scoop us up and hurl down on us. I saw your bare chest once on a late summer evening in northern Canada, your salmon ribs as you lazed above the landscape. I don't know why I thought of winter then, how impossible when enmeshed in one it is to imagine another. I tried to see the lake frozen over, updrafts of snow, you bundled in a thick gray coat, turning away. Do you get tired of people staring at you? Do you like the attention? We parse you for clues as to what is to happen. Once predictions are made, we ignore them. The cup. Too hot to drink in the beginning, with time a skin puckered at the sides grew across the top. I ran a spoon around the inside edge. It hung against the silver like the pelt of a small brown animal. I put down the spoon, lifted the stoneware to my lips, let in a sip, coating my tongue and the roof of my mouth. Sweetness and acidity, a half step removed from burning, tang of fruit. It keeps its secrets well, layered and evaporating. Already as I drank, the heat was draining off. What warmth could be captured flowed into my chest, joining my own, traveling out. Understanding. Earth is waiting and ready to soak up what the day sends down. The sky is waiting for wind, blows clouds across its face. Wind races across the face of earth, coming around on the other side. Ocean waits for pull of tides. Leaves wait for light to open, roots for water they will ferry up, blossoms open to insect feet, and from that teasing form the fruit. Day stretches tired in the afternoon. Spring waits for summer, summer for fall, falls into a blanket of winter. Underground waits for thaw, feeds on root sugar and grows. Rivers wait to rise, return to sea. Days can be counted, but what sets off the movement down the canal? Young wait to pull scents from sounds, in the waiting repeat them. Later they will make their own, using palate, tongue, teeth, and lips, and waiting still for something else, burrowing to ground, slipped between passing clouds, sucked up through roots to bloom. And that is actually the last poem in the book, but I'm going to close with a poem that isn't in the book. You know, as Tracy mentioned earlier, for obvious reasons, I was really thrilled when she called me to tell me about the Birdie Prize. But I was also excited because the press is based in Emporia, and I had been in Emporia that previous summer on the way to deliver my son to Colorado. And we decided that we would take a little detour from I-70, and it's a long drive from Pennsylvania, eastern Pennsylvania to Boulder, Colorado. And so we took a day off the road to visit the Tallgrass Prairie National Preserve. And we spent a great day hiking, seeing bison, and experiencing that unique ecosystem. And when I returned to Pennsylvania, I wrote a poem that was inspired by that place. And it hasn't been published yet, but it is circulating. The other thing I'll tell you is that there's a Cree word used in the poem, Asinwadi, which is the Cree word for the Rocky Mountains. And the literal translation appears in the poem. This is Tallgrass. I do not believe in an afterlife, but in a journey that carries us from one state of being to another. It happens in the time it takes to draw a breath that might be experienced as months or years. Say we open eyes in Tallgrass Prairie, like the grassland in which our species was born. Indian grass, blue stem, switchgrass, rosinweed, coneflower, bison, prairie dogs. Fires sweep through, control growth of trees. Wind blows us from this soft land into rising dryness. Soapwood yucca, plains prickly pear, honey mesquite, short grass, blue grama, buffalo grass, hailstorms, blizzards, tornadoes, drought. Asinwadi, seen across the prairies, they look like a rocky mass. Ascend cottonwood to one-seed juniper, ponderosa, Douglas fir, quaking aspen, lodgepole and bristlecone pine, blue spruce. Thank you.
That was all really, really, really wonderful, Allison. And the chats are agreeing. What a marvelous variety of amazing poetry, Kay says. Brian says, thanks, Allison. Great work. So thank you, Allison. Your bird poems always stick out to me, especially because there aren't so many in there that it feels like there are, you know, that it's deeply, deeply significant, but there are enough in there that it definitely seems like you have some sort of connection to birds. Do you feel like you are especially in tune with birds and therefore poetically inspired?
Well, it's interesting. The bird poems are all really pretty much inspired. When I think back on, I have some bird poems in my other books too. So it's kind of interesting when I think about it. Most of them are actually inspired from things that happen. Yellowbird, I really, and this was again at the Porches retreat, there is this this yellowbird that shows up every once in a while. Now that was the first year that I've seen it, but now I've seen more of them. And I was following, I was just very kind of fascinated. You could see, go into Flowerfly where this bird was going. And so that's kind of what happened with that. The starlings is all absolutely true. We really had this poor bird, hanging from our gutter. I got but I had an assignment for my poetry group to write about an animal, and right away, that kind of popped into my head. There's another little story with that poem, because again, I had a really wonderful interaction with a journal about this, because I sent it to Poet Lore, and I had an editor there who wrote me back and said, we'd like to take this, but would you consider some edits? And I said, well, sure, let me, and she said, I'll send you some ideas, and let you see, So I said, okay, that'd be fine. And she sent me her edits, and I really liked them. In fact, I kind of learned something at that point about sort of shortening poems and what you can do. And they were just brilliant. I love the way they handled it. It's a wonderful magazine. So that's also a nice story there. When I see, and there's, cardinals are not rare around here by any means, but every time I see one, I feel like there's something sort of special, because and whether it's the bright red male or the kind of grayish red female, which you don't see as much, but still it always feels like it's kind of special to see them. So I think I'm kind of aware of them. I don't know if I have any special understanding. My husband is probably, he kept a bird list for a little while. And if you'll indulge me, I'll tell one more bird story that when I met my husband at Arizona, we were both at the University of Arizona, and we had a friend there who had a cabin down in the, oh geez, I'm going to forget the mountain range now, south of Tucson, and the Santa Ritas. And so we used to go and spend some weekends. It was her grandmother's cabin, and as soon as her grandmother died, it was going to go back to the Forest Service, but they could use it in the meantime. And there's a bird called a trogon, and Arizona is their northernmost range. And they were there one weekend, and we went out with our friend, and I didn't think I was going to see any, and I did. And it is as if you look up the bird, you'll see why it's pretty exciting to see them. So that was definitely a highlight. And so my husband spent a little time in the Grand Canyon, and he kept a birding list for a while. So, it's, I've never really gone that far myself, but I do notice them, try to notice them.
We've got some other words of congratulations in the chat for you.
Okay.
Some vivid imagery and a lovely Friday evening, and just such a treat to hear your poetry. So know that those are there.
I'll just say I wanted to give out a shout out to Brian too, because the last time when I was here, Brian read, and I really enjoyed his poetry. And so thank you for coming, Brian. Appreciate that.
Just wanted to say it was so beautiful to hear your voice, Allison.
Oh, thank you, Therese. Oh, that's very nice. Therese is a very good poet herself, and I think she selected one of my poems for a program that she was doing. And I thought, oh wow, you know, I kind of screwed up my courage. I said, I've got to meet this person, this wonderful poet, and we did. We met and had coffee and have been friends since, and hung around various AWP conventions with each other. So it's great to see you too, Therese.
Yes, I had a question. I don't know why this hasn't occurred to me before because I've been to readings before, but it seems more salient for poets. Like, at what point do you read your own poems out loud, like when you're writing? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I know that I pretty much get all the way through my novel manuscript before I ever read it to myself and heard my own voice speaking like what I had written, and that was like 70,000 words later. So I'm just kind of curious at what point you listen to yourself.
Yeah, you need a big glass of water for that. Yeah, you know, it's something that sometimes you have to make yourself do. It's always revealing because when you instantly hear, you know, things that aren't quite working right or that are difficult to say. And if you stumble, you know, it's a place you want to look at again. So it's a really good thing to do for poetry or prose, but I have to kind of force myself to do it. So I'm getting better at doing it a little earlier. But one of the things, if you have readings, it's great because you prepare and then and then you see, you know, sometimes there's little changes you make, you know. So it's really good to do readings. I mean, I think a lot of poets use readings that way, and that's one of the reasons why readings are important to poets. But I think it's a good thing to kind of, but sometimes you have to, I tell people, even if you have to go in your bathroom, I'm always nervous, even though there's nobody in the house but the dog. And I still feel nervous when I first start, and then I get into it and I'm not so nervous, but it is a really good thing to do. You do pick up things, you know, so I'd say I do it when I'm feeling like I'm kind of nearing the end of a draft. If I don't do it before that, but I'll do it when I'm kind of ending up a draft that I know I'm going to kind of leave for a little while. And then sometimes you come back and you see things that you didn't see. It's amazing how that works. But yeah, it's definitely something that's good to do, and that sometimes you have to force yourself to do a little bit. Yeah, excellent question. That's a really good question. And I think the answer too probably varies for each individual a lot. You know, I've been to a couple of readings. Who were they now? Mark Doty was one of them, I know, and the other's on the tip of my tongue, but I'm forgetting, in the spotlight here. But I've been to a couple of readings, and it's a while ago, where poets read new work, you know, that they said, this is kind of hot off the presses. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. But Mark Doty said he did it because that's how he heard, you know, what further revisions he had to do. And I think that's great. And that indicates to me that he kind of had to have a public reading to kind of make himself do that. Well, it's great to see all these familiar faces. Thank you very much, and thank you again to Tracy and Lindsay. It really has been a pleasure, and again, I will sing the praises of your press, and the Birdie Prize too. So I hope you'll get some good submissions this year.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. All right. Good night.